A new world order, the rule of law, or the law of the rulers. This article is about a new world order. The Bretton Woods system. President Trump's ongoing trade war with China is symptomatic of broader global change to the world order that have been evolving for decades. For a large degree, these changes are grounded in the continuums of modern historical and geopolitical trends and are reiterations and possible resuscitations of 19th century great power rivalries. Rivalries. Power rivalries. This emerging new year in which we right bring with it in 17th anniversaries of D-Day and the new world order ushered in by the American century that soon followed. This transformation created by United States and key partners are effected through what we shall refer to as Bretton Woods system that emanated from Bretton Woods Conference held in July 1944 in small New Hampshire hamlet of that name. New Hampshire hamlet of that name. New Hampshire hamlet of that name. To that gathering was essentially designed to address pressing international financial relations following the war. Its former name was United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference. Its impact soon extended to political sphere as well, and by extension to associate legal and social issues. It is within this larger domain that we deploy BWS designation. These Walton's functions, while imperfect and in need of a 21st century update, had nevertheless led to unprecedented global peace and prosperity over the past 75 years. But why changes are warranted? It is our belief that there is no reason to fundamentally alter or abandon the foundations of the BWS, nor to undermine the enduring principle of political democracy, market-based economics, transactions, and transparent international rules, regulations, and laws on which it was built. Unfortunately, we are witnessing today serious attempt to do just that. In response, we believe there is compelling need to address the BWS in the light of current realities and to formulate not a new paradigm, but necessary corrective that will maintaining the benefits of this remarkable creation yet. We also acknowledge both present and future exigencies. To pursue politics contrary to pursue policies contrary to the values inherent in BWS, we assess could create existential danger to the world and its inhabitants and as such must be confronted and disrupted. The BWS was the outcome of sober reflections on the dangers of uncoordinated policy decisions made by independent state actors who place their own perceived need above all else, regardless of collateral outcome. While such behavior might have had relative negotiable consequence in prime time, the growth of an interconnected world system brought about by advance in technology and trade relations, spurred by the relationship of Great Britain in the latter half of the 19th century, now mean that unilateral decisions making could have serious and potentially mortal spillover effects for all participants, but they actively engage or, in a sense, bystander. Yet, there were few, if any, existing mechanisms to manage this new and increasingly interconnected system of international relation. Instead, the purest pattern of great power rivalries and intruders remain in effect. This arrangement had prevailed from the end of the Napoleonic War in 1814 after Paris Peace Conference in 1919. Its participants were the major nation states of that era, essentially all European, but later joined by both United States and Japan, rising power of the last 19th century. The result was a world system so fragile that disruptions and chaos were almost bound to occur at some point, which is finally did horrifying fashions starting 1914 and lasting to the 1945. While no doubt there were many who understood the threat to global peace and stability contained in such archaic arrangement, not the least of whom was President Woodrow Wilson and his cherished notion of a League of Nations. The roots of great power stasis were simply too deep to overcome in any peaceful fashion. Only the unprecedented destructions of the World War II forced a determination to that old order, generating from it ashes a belief by many that finally the time for tectonic level change that arrival. Under new leadership from a remarkable union of men, principally Americans who had not previously commanded a world stage. These individuals were fiercely determined to prevent future catastrophes through a fundamental reordering the fractured world system. The result was the conference at Bretton Woods attended by 730 delegates, delegate 730 delegates from the 44 nations who who constitute constitute who constitute the alliance force in the war. In an inspiration for this gathering was the Atlantic Charter draft by Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Winston Churchill in 1941, where clauses 4 and 5 of that document draw a direct line between fair and rule-based global trade and prospect for global peace and prosperity. Prosperity. While the U.S. delegations clearly took the lead. This was by no means a one-nation show. Indeed, the Britain's economists J. Maynard Keynes, the creators of macroeconomics, and Agassiz, the greatest economic theory theoreticians since Adam Smith was the principal architect of many of new concepts encased in the BWS. Moreover, we would also be seriously remiss to overlook the looming shadow of the Cold War that soon engulfed global relations in nearly every aspect of connectivity. The clash of ideologies represented by West and Soviet Union were clearly understood by the conference attendees and their respective government, but all that being said, it is just a clear. But all that being said, it is just as clear that principles and concepts enshrined in the American experiment of nationhood were the foundational factors in the BWS that ultimately emerged. Throwing off the historical isolationism that has hindered American roles in the world affairs for so long, the Greatest Generation arose to the challenge and stamped the future with its signature. The launch revenue Dewey that followed, that is the post-World War II era of relative peace and prosperity that we have enjoyed for 75 years. This is a testament to the strength and integrity of that foundation. Nothing, however, as we well know, is forever. Indeed, change appears to be only constant. True, this peace does vary. As such, it was that infrastructure of the BWS was perhaps inevitably subjected to shift, some minor and outer seismics in the nature. The key of the key macro factors that altered the post-World War II era was American rejections of politicians' isolationism, isolationisms, politician, political isolationisms, political isolationism that has characterized much of its period's history and its place and embrace of global economics and political engagement, largely driven by goal of containment of Soviet Union and its opposing ideological claim. As we note above, the economic structure of this enjoyment of the world was based on philosophy of Western value regarding trade and finance, the rule of laws and regulations, and adjudications mean to resolve differences as they arose. These principles were enshrined in the creations of various institutions designed to manage outcome in an orderly and principled fashions that value economic and relative politics stability. These include the International Monetary Fund (IMF), the World War International Bank of Reconstruction and Development (IBRD), Bretton Woods Agreement itself has set fixed currency exchange rate among among participant nations, and the General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, the GATT, watered down substitutions for the originally proposed International Trade Organization that was watered by recalcitrant elements of the Republican Party in the U.S. Senate. In 1995, the GATT was replaced by the World War Organization (WHO) as the principal global body regulating international commerce. Over time, these allied institutions came to be caught in what was loosely defined as the Washington Consortium. That is the basis upon which the global economy would operate. The fundamentals were a reverend for the market system, for exchange and favorisms for the regulation over public control, the liberalizations of the trade and the reduction of cross-border barriers, and the preeminence of private sector over state enterprise, and respect to the private property and legal mechanism to ensure its protections. The term Washington Consortium was the clear indicator of where the seat of the power resided and the values that would define it. And through this system was economics in nature over broader definitions of the BWS, as we use in this paper, is also meant to be indicative of its political and legal underpinning. That is democracy, judicial system, equalities and transparencies, respect for individual freedoms such as expression, relations, and other basic human rights. Associate institutions mean to capture these principles, including the United Nations (UN) and its several trade-off. Several offshoot UN educational, scientific, and cultural organization UNESCO and International Labour Organization ILO, originally formed in 1919 and integrated into UN. The International Court of Justice, the Permanent Court of Arbitrations, and many other such bodies formed in the post-World War era to address international issues as the nations of the world converge into what has been defined as globalization. And finally, we could also make defense related organizations such as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization (NATO) and the relative short-lived South Asia Treaty Organization (SEATO), as well as various UN agencies devoted to a non-nuclear proliferation. As this multitude of organizations and institutions took shape, a direct result as the opening and deepening of financial, technological, and trade channel between nations, both large and small, advanced and emerging. It makes political north and south, and as anticipates global wealth and prosperity began to rise. While wealth and income distributions obviously did not quickly shape to perfect or even reasonable equality and establishments of capitalism's regimes in the far-flung corner of the world has not been previously been participants in such a system did generate hope and aspiration for millions, especially so in so-called emerging market. Some more significant global market did not return.